It was late on a quiet Friday evening, and the laboratory was almost empty. The hum of machines filled the room, punctuated by the occasional beep from monitors tracking test samples. One technician, focused and tired, was going through the final batch of blood test results for the week. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, and a soft breeze from the air conditioning made the papers on the desk flutter. The technician had been working long hours. As the lab was busy with hundreds of samples each day, each result had to be carefully reviewed before sending to patients and doctors. Mistakes were rare, but they could be serious, sometimes life-changing. Tonight, the pressure felt heavier than usual. A single error could cost someone not just peace of mind, but possibly their health. One particular set of results caught the technician's eye. Two reports had similar codes, and without realizing it, the files were swapped. One set belonged to a well-known entrepreneur, a man whose wealth and influence made him recognizable even in passing. The other was from an ordinary young journalist, someone who had recently requested routine tests for a personal health check. Fatigue clouded the technician's attention, and in a single click, the results went out to the wrong recipients. Minutes later, the billionaire received an email notification. Expecting his routine update, he opened the message and froze. The numbers and notes on the report suggested a serious health problem. His breathing quickened, and a cold sweat formed on his forehead. The markers were alarming, indicating something severe and potentially urgent. In disbelief, he looked over the page again, making sure he was reading it right. Within moments, his assistant received a call. The tone was urgent, almost trembling. "Come to my office immediately," the billionaire commanded, his voice tight with concern. The words sent a shiver down the assistant's spine, and she relayed the message to the technician in the lab. Panic rose like a tide in the technician's chest. This was no ordinary patient. This was one of the most powerful people in the country, a man known for his direct and sometimes ruthless approach. A mistake could be disastrous. The technician rushed to check the files again. Papers were shuffled, screens clicked open and closed, and the room seemed suddenly louder than it had been just minutes ago. A sinking feeling settled in the pit of the stomach, heavier than anything felt before. The possibility of an error was clear, and the consequences could be unimaginable. Every detail was rechecked: codes, names, numbers. It was becoming painfully obvious that the results had been switched. Meanwhile, the billionaire, unaware of the mix-up, was pacing in his high-rise office. The city lights below reflected on the glass walls, casting shadows across the sleek, minimalist room. Each step was measured, controlled, but his mind raced. Thoughts of health, treatment, and worst-case scenarios swirled rapidly. He called a friend briefly, only to cut the conversation short, unwilling to share the fear yet back in the lab. The technician packed the necessary files and documents into a folder, hands trembling slightly. Thoughts tumbled in a rapid, disjointed stream. What if he loses trust? What if the mistake affects his reputation? What if this costs someone their life? The lab, usually a place of calm and order, now felt like a pressure cooker. Time seemed to stretch. The journey to the billionaire's office was tense and silent. Every step in the elevator felt like it carried the weight of the world. The city outside the windows blurred as the technician tried to prepare mentally for what lay ahead. Should the truth be admitted immediately? Could the situation be explained calmly, or would panic and anger take over? The office floor was polished and reflective. When the technician stepped out of the elevator, the surroundings felt imposing. Security personnel glanced briefly, then returned to their duties. The assistant appeared and guided the technician through corridors lined with modern art and luxurious furnishings. Each step was heavy, each breath shallow. Finally, the technician stood at the door, hand hovering over the handle. A deep inhale, a soft shake of the shoulders, and then the door opened. Inside, the billionaire sat behind a massive desk, hands steepled together, eyes sharp and searching. The room was silent for a heartbeat, the tension palpable. The technician cleared their throat, voice trembling slightly. The story had to be told, mistakes admitted, and hope for understanding clung to the edge of every word. The moment was heavy, the consequences unknown. It was a test not of knowledge, but of courage and honesty. And in that quiet high-rise office, With the city sprawling below and the weight of a potential error pressing in, the technician faced the situation that would change both lives, forever linking a single human error to a billionaire's moment of fear and the fragile, unpredictable threat of trust. The moment the technician stepped out of the elevator, every sound seemed sharper, every movement slower. The city outside glittered with lights, but it offered no comfort. Each footstep toward the office was heavier than the last, like walking through invisible mud. A knot of anxiety had settled in the stomach, tightening with every heartbeat. The realization of the mistake was overwhelming. And now, the anticipation of the billionaire's reaction made every second stretch longer. The assistant led the way down a long corridor lined with glass walls and abstract art. The walls reflected both the lights and the tension in the room, creating a dizzying effect. The technician tried to steady breathing, counted silently, tried to slow the pulse that seemed determined to escape. Thoughts raced. Should the mistake be admitted at once? Should there be an explanation first? Should words be rehearsed? Or should honesty speak for itself? Finally, the office door loomed ahead. The assistant paused, giving a slight nod, and opened it. The room was spacious, high ceilings, minimalist in design, but every detail spoke of precision and control. Behind the massive desk, the billionaire stood, looking out the window at the city below. Even from a distance, the tension in his posture was unmistakable. When he finally turned, eyes locked onto the technician, and the room seemed to shrink, leaving only the two of them. "Sit down," he said. The voice was calm, but it carried an edge that made the heart jump. The technician moved toward the chair, hands shaking slightly, and seated themselves, trying to appear composed. Papers were spread neatly on the desk, charts, and notes that were as intimidating as they were organized. The silence stretched. Every second felt like an eternity. "Tell me," he said, voice steady but sharp, "are these results correct?" The question was simple, but the weight behind it was immense. The technician opened their mouth, then closed it again, struggling to find the right words. Honesty was necessary, but the fear of repercussions made the voice tremble. Finally, a soft, careful voice began to explain. The technician described the process of testing. The number of samples handled each day, the meticulous attention required, and the fatigue that had built over long hours. Every detail was shared without over-explaining. Every word chosen to convey both competence and the human fallibility that had led to the mistake. The technician paused, eyes meeting the billionaire's, and admitted the possibility that the results might have been switched with another patient. For a moment, the billionaire's expression was unreadable. Silence fell again, heavy and dense. The technician's chest tightened with dread, feeling as if the air itself had grown thick. Thoughts tumbled. This could be the end of a career, the end of trust, the end of something much bigger than themselves. And yet honesty had been laid bare, raw and unflinching. There was no turning back. The billionaire leaned back in the chair, fingers steepled together, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke. The voice was quiet but controlled. "So you're saying it might be a mistake? That these numbers might not mean what they appear to mean?" The technician nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes. I've double-checked everything, and it seems likely that the reports were swapped accidentally. I wanted to come here immediately to explain before anyone else received the wrong information." The words were careful, sincere, and trembled just slightly from nerves. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the desk, eyes locking on the technician with a mixture of scrutiny and curiosity. "I see mistakes happen. People make them, even in critical work. But this is serious. You understand that, right?" The question was not accusatory, but firm, demanding awareness of the stakes. The technician nodded, speaking softly. "Yes, I understand completely. I take full responsibility for the error. I just want to make sure that the correct information reaches you as quickly as possible." The billionaire sat back again, letting the silence settle. The tension in the room remained, but now it was tempered with thoughtfulness. The technician could feel the watchful gaze, weighing words, weighing character, weighing intent. And in that gaze there was a moment of realization, This was not about wealth or power alone. This was about trust, about responsibility, about the human element that existed even in the highest echelons of influence. After another long pause, he spoke again, this time with a lighter tone, though still measured. I appreciate your honesty. Most people would try to cover a mistake, deny it, or delay the explanation. You came directly. That matters. It doesn't erase the error, but it shows integrity. The relief was almost tangible. The knot in the stomach loosened slightly, though fear still lingered. The conversation shifted then to logistics. The technician explained how the correct results could be verified, how records could be double-checked, and how the mix-up could be corrected immediately. The billionaire listened attentively, asking pointed questions, but also allowing the technician to take control of the explanation. There was a surprising level of calm in his demeanor, as if the initial shock had been absorbed, and now reason could prevail. Time moved forward slowly, yet productively. The technician guided him through the charts, pointing out how the samples had been labeled, how the error likely occurred, and what steps could prevent future mistakes. Each explanation was met with nods, questions, or occasional murmurs. But the tension, while still present, shifted toward problem-solving rather than fear. Outside the office, the city continued its rhythm, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the high-rise. Inside, human connection and trust were being tested in ways that no money or power could insulate against. The billionaire, despite influence and wealth, was relying on someone else's honesty and expertise. The technician, despite fear and doubt, was stepping into responsibility in the most vulnerable way possible. Finally, after careful review and discussion, the billionaire leaned back in the chair with a small, almost imperceptible sigh. There was relief there, tempered by lingering concern, but also a measure of respect for the human willingness to confront mistakes openly. He spoke, voice quieter now, thoughtful. Mistakes happen, and we can correct them. What matters is how we respond. Thank you for coming here directly. The words, simple and direct, carried a weight that the technician could feel in the chest. As the meeting concluded, the technician felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. The fear had been intense, almost paralyzing, but it had been met with reason, with a willingness to understand, and with a measure of humanity that was both surprising and reassuring. Steps were agreed upon to correct the error, and both parties left the conversation with clarity on what needed to be done. Walking back to the elevator, the technician allowed a deep breath to escape. The city outside seemed brighter, the lights softer, less intimidating. The experience had been harrowing, but it had also been a lesson in courage, honesty, and the unpredictable ways humans can respond to mistakes. In that towering office, the balance of fear, trust, and responsibility had been tested, and in a quiet, human-centered resolution, understanding had emerged. The journey back to the lab was quiet, but the thoughts were loud. What had been learned about accountability? About the importance of transparency? About how even those with immense power could respond with patience and reason when faced with human error? The answers were not simple, but the experience itself had etched lessons that would not soon be forgotten. The night, which had begun with tension and dread, ended with reflection. For the technician, it was a reminder that mistakes, though serious, could also reveal integrity, courage, and the strength of human connection. And for the billionaire, it was a reminder that even in a world of wealth and influence, reliance on others' honesty and competence remained vital. In the quiet after the storm, there was a subtle but profound sense of understanding that neither money, power, nor status could replace. The next few minutes in the office felt like a blur to the technician. Every movement, every breath was measured, yet the mind raced. The billionaire, who had seemed so formidable and untouchable in the beginning, now appeared more human, a man grappling with uncertainty and the fear of what might be. There was an intensity in his gaze that demanded honesty, demanded clarity, and yet it was tempered with patience and reason. The technician began explaining the sequence of events in careful detail, his voice steadying as each word was spoken. The process of handling samples, labeling, cross-checking, and entering results was described without embellishment, every step laid bare. It was not just an admission of error. It was a demonstration of diligence and transparency, a human effort to set things right in the face of a mistake. The billionaire listened quietly, occasionally nodding, eyes never leaving the technician. After a pause, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. His hands were folded together, fingers tapping lightly against one another. "So, you are saying that this could have been a mix-up with another patient's results?" he asked, voice calm but firm. The technician nodded, swallowing hard, and explained that the probability was high given the similar coding of the files and the fatigue that had set in during the long day. It was a delicate moment, a balancing act between fear and responsibility. The technician felt the weight of the entire situation pressing down. Yet there was a strange clarity in admitting the truth directly, in owning the mistake fully. The billionaire's expression softened slightly, a hint of relief flickering across his features, though it was masked by a thoughtful seriousness. "I trust that you understand the seriousness of this," he said after a pause. "We are talking about something very personal, very critical. Mistakes in this area can be life-changing." His words were not a threat. They were a reminder, a measure of reality. The technician nodded earnestly, feeling the full weight of responsibility. Every detail, every number, every label mattered. Lives were affected by the accuracy of this work, and now the error had directly impacted someone with immense influence and the means to demand perfection. They went through the report together, line by line. The technician pointed out the anomalies, the small discrepancies that had led to the suspicion of error. Charts and figures were explained with care, showing the logic behind each step and each observation. The billionaire asked questions, sometimes challenging the assumptions, other times listening in silence as the technician clarified and corrected. There was a rhythm to the conversation, a careful dance between explanation and verification, between fear and reason. In that office, the billionaire was not the untouchable figure seen in public. He was a man faced with uncertainty, dependent on the honesty and skill of another. The technician, though anxious and vulnerable, was in a position of trust, guiding someone through the confusion and fear that had suddenly erupted. It was a rare moment where human connection, honesty, and competence intersected in a high-stakes situation. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The discussion turned to the potential consequences of the error and how best to correct it. The technicians suggested rechecking all recent test samples, implementing a verification process, and ensuring that the correct results reached the right patients without delay. The billionaire agreed, impressed by the calm and methodical approach in the face of an otherwise alarming situation. There was a moment of quiet reflection. The room was filled with a mixture of relief and residual tension. Both understood that the immediate danger of the error could be corrected, but the memory of fear and uncertainty would linger. The technician felt a subtle shift from panic to a focused determination to make sure nothing like this could happen again. The billionaire, for his part, seemed to recognize the importance of human honesty over perfection, of trust over fear. "I appreciate your courage in coming here directly," the billionaire said finally. "It is easy to hide mistakes, to delay or deny. You chose to confront the situation openly. That counts for something." The technician felt a warmth of reassurance, a quiet validation that honesty, even when terrifying, was the right choice. It was a small but significant acknowledgement, human in its recognition of vulnerability and integrity. They discussed practical steps next, how the verification of results would occur, and how future errors could be prevented. The billionaire was attentive, asking questions about protocols, systems, and safeguards. The technician explained the measures already in place, acknowledged the human limitations, and suggested improvements that could reduce the chance of similar mistakes. There was a sense of collaboration now, working together toward a solution rather than a confrontation. Time moved slowly, measured by discussion and thought rather than by the clock on the wall. The city outside continued its ceaseless rhythm, lights twinkling far below. unaware of the drama and tension that had unfolded above. Inside, a human lesson in trust, responsibility, and courage was being written, silent testament to the value of honesty and the resilience of character under pressure. Finally, the billionaire leaned back in his chair, a subtle smile touching his lips. The relief in his eyes was tempered by a lingering concern. But there was respect now, a recognition of the human effort and integrity displayed. He spoke, voice quieter but steady, acknowledging the steps taken, the transparency shown, and the careful thought that would prevent future mistakes. The technician felt exhaustion, both mental and emotional, but also a sense of accomplishment. The fear and panic that had dominated earlier moments had shifted into clarity and purpose. Mistakes, though serious, had been met with understanding and problem-solving. The human connection, honesty, and courage displayed had created a bridge between error and resolution. Fear and trust, as the meeting concluded. The technician gathered the necessary documents to begin correcting the error. The billionaire's instructions were clear, calm, and precise. The responsibility remained heavy, but the path forward was now illuminated. Walking back through the office, the technician felt a newfound respect for the complexity of human interaction, for the importance of trust, and for the power of honesty under pressure. In the elevator, the city lights reflected on the glass walls, but they now seemed softer, less intimidating. The technician allowed a deep breath to escape, feeling a combination of relief, exhaustion, and reflection. The night had brought a lesson that could not be measured by charts or figures: the value of facing mistakes head-on, the strength in admitting error, and the unexpected human capacity for patience, understanding, and respect. The walk back to the lab was quieter, but the mind remained active. Thoughts raced through the lessons learned, the emotions felt, and the impact of the encounter. What had been a moment of fear and uncertainty had transformed into a profound experience of trust, accountability, and resilience. The technician understood that this incident, though difficult, had revealed the depth of human character, both in themselves and in the billionaire they had faced. By the time the lab doors opened, the night had deepened, the city below shimmering with quiet energy. The technician stepped inside, feeling the contrast between the familiar environment of work and the extraordinary encounter that had just occurred. The machines hummed steadily, indifferent to the human drama that had unfolded above. Yet within the technician, a lasting impression remained, a story of courage, honesty, and the delicate, powerful bond of trust in moments of high stakes. The experience would not soon fade. It had tested nerves, resilience, and integrity. It had illuminated the weight of responsibility carried by those who work behind the scenes, the human vulnerabilities that even the most powerful individuals face, and the strength found in facing mistakes openly. The night had begun with tension and fear, but it ended with understanding and a subtle, profound sense of respect. In the quiet of the lab, the technician reflected on the strange, human journey that had unfolded in the skyscraper above, knowing that both lives had been forever touched by a single moment of courage and honesty. Returning to the lab after the tense meeting, the technician felt a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and lingering anxiety. The fluorescent lights overhead, which usually seemed sterile and ordinary, now reflected the weight of the night's events. Sitting at the desk, the hands still slightly trembling, there was a realization that every choice, every action in this job could ripple far beyond the walls of the lab. The first step was to verify the results that had been mistakenly sent. The technician meticulously went through each sample again, checking codes, confirming labels, and cross-referencing patient information. Every small detail mattered now more than ever. There was a deep understanding that the mistake, though human, had consequences that extended beyond a single moment of panic. Lives could be affected, and trust, once broken, could be difficult to rebuild. Colleagues began to notice the unusual tension. Whispers circulated quietly, curiosity mingled with concern. Some had heard snippets of the incident, enough to know that the technician had been summoned by a billionaire. The mixture of fear, admiration, and speculation in the lab was palpable. Yet, The technician remained focused on the task at hand, aware that gossip could wait. Accuracy and accountability were the priorities. Step by step, the verification continued. Each sample was carefully examined, numbers double-checked, and inconsistencies noted. The human attention to detail, the patience to go slowly despite fatigue, and the determination to make things right became almost a ritual. Hours seemed to stretch as the technician moved methodically through the process, occasionally pausing to breathe and refocus. Once the verification was complete, the corrected results were prepared for delivery. The technician took care to ensure that the documents were clear, accurate, and unmistakable. Every chart, every number, every note was scrutinized to prevent further confusion. It was not just about correcting a mistake. It was about restoring confidence and ensuring that trust could be rebuilt. While preparing the reports, I'm excited to work to safeguard and red and red array and all round the dot of red dot to road where red to road wad the calm, measured response, the focus on solutions rather than punishment, had left a lasting impression. It was rare to encounter such patience and understanding, especially when faced with a potentially alarming situation. The experience highlighted the importance of honesty, transparency, and courage in human interactions. Even in high-stakes environments, the corrected reports were sent securely, and confirmation of receipt came quickly. The sense of relief was immediate, but tempered by the awareness that responsibility did not end with sending the documents. Procedures would need to be reviewed, systems improved, and vigilance maintained to prevent similar errors in the future. The incident had exposed weaknesses. Now there was an opportunity to strengthen the process. The billionaire later sent a note, brief but meaningful, thanking the technician for honesty and integrity. It was an acknowledgement that, despite the mistake, the human effort to face the situation directly mattered more than perfection. The words were simple, yet they carried profound weight. They reinforced the lesson that accountability, transparency, and courage could turn even a tense and frightening moment into an opportunity for growth and understanding. In the following days, the lab implemented stricter verification protocols. Each sample was cross-checked multiple times. Colleagues were trained to recognize the potential for human error in high-pressure situations. The technician, though still carrying the memory of the fear and anxiety, took on a leadership role in ensuring that the new measures were effective. The experience had changed not only the approach to work, but also the perspective on responsibility and diligence. Colleagues gradually returned to routine, but the story of the night's events lingered. It became a quiet lesson in courage and human connection, a reminder that even in the most ordinary environments, extraordinary moments could occur. The technician's willingness to face the mistake openly, to navigate the fear and uncertainty, left a subtle but enduring impression on everyone who learned of it. The experience also prompted reflection on personal growth. Fear had been intense, yet it had been met with clarity, problem-solving, and understanding. Anxiety had been transformed into determination. Panic had been replaced with methodical action. The journey from error to resolution was not just about correcting numbers. It was about discovering resilience, integrity, and the power of human honesty. The billionaire, for his part, maintained correspondence, offering guidance and encouragement. The interaction, once dominated by fear, had evolved into mutual respect. The technician saw that even those with immense influence and power were capable of empathy. patience, and understanding when approached with sincerity. It was a lesson that transcended the immediate work, touching on broader truths about trust, responsibility, and human interaction. Even after the immediate tasks were completed, the memory of the night remained vivid. The anxiety, the fear, the relief, and the quiet satisfaction of handling the situation with honesty and competence became a story to carry forward. It was a reminder that mistakes, though inevitable, could also reveal character, teach lessons, and strengthen resolve. The lab returned to its usual rhythm. Machines humming, monitors beeping, and the routine of daily work continuing. Yet, within that routine, a subtle awareness persisted. The human element mattered more than any procedure. The choices made in moments of pressure could define integrity. And honesty, even when terrifying, was a powerful force. The technician moved through each day with renewed focus, a deeper appreciation for diligence, and a clear understanding of the importance of transparency in quiet moments. There was reflection on the extraordinary circumstances that had unfolded. The fear of confrontation had given way to the realization that human honesty and courage could create bridges where panic and misunderstanding might otherwise dominate. The incident became a touchstone, a personal reminder that even in the face of immense pressure, it was possible to navigate fear, maintain integrity, and emerge with both lessons learned and respect earned. Through the experience, the technician learned that responsibility was not just about accuracy in work, but also about the courage to face consequences, the patience to explain, and the humility to acknowledge mistakes. The human connection, the trust placed by the billionaire, and the careful, deliberate actions taken to correct the error had created a profound learning moment. It was a story of human resilience, accountability, and the subtle power of integrity in even the most challenging situations. By the end of the week, life in the lab had settled into its regular pace, but the lessons endured. The experience had shaped the technician's approach to work, relationships, and personal growth. Mistakes were no longer just errors to fear. They were opportunities to demonstrate character, build trust, and navigate challenges with honesty and courage. In the quiet of the lab, amidst the routine and the hum of machines, a story of human perseverance and integrity had quietly unfolded, leaving a lasting impact on all who had witnessed or been part of it. Weeks had passed since the incident, yet the memory remained vivid for the technician. Each morning, walking into the lab felt familiar. Yet the mind often drifted back to that tense night, the panic, the fear, the responsibility, and the unexpected calm that had followed. Life had returned to routine, but something fundamental had shifted. The experience had left an indelible mark, a quiet reminder of the power of honesty, courage, and human connection. The lab hummed with activity as usual, machines beeping and monitors flashing results in rhythm with the staff moving methodically through their duties. The technician had resumed normal work, but with a heightened awareness of every sample, every label, and every detail. Mistakes were always a possibility, but the experience had brought a sharper focus. It's a deeper sense of responsibility that could not be erased. Each action was now measured, deliberate, and intentional, with a careful consideration of the human impact behind every test and report. Colleagues often asked about the incident, curiosity glinting in their eyes. Some were drawn to the story of being summoned by one of the most powerful figures in the country. Others were more interested in how the technician had handled the fear and pressure. Each recounting, though brief, was a lesson in human resilience, a demonstration that even in moments of extreme anxiety, honesty and courage could prevail. It became a quiet legend in the lab, a story shared with care, inspiring diligence and integrity in others. The technician also reflected privately on the interaction with the billionaire, the calm, reasoned response, the emphasis on solutions rather than blame, and the recognition of human honesty had been extraordinary. It was not every day that mistakes were met with understanding rather than anger. The memory of the conversation, the words spoken, the pauses, the subtle gestures was a constant reminder that even powerful people were capable of empathy, patience, and respect when faced with sincere honesty. In the weeks that followed, small changes were implemented in the lab, double-check systems were strengthened, new protocols introduced, and colleagues were trained to anticipate and prevent human error. The technician played an active role in these improvements. It's not just as a participant, but as a guide, sharing insights and lessons learned. The experience had transformed fear into constructive action, turning a moment of panic into an opportunity for growth, learning, and professional development. The billionaire remained in indirect contact, sending a note of thanks and encouragement. The words were simple, yet they carried profound significance: recognition of honesty, acknowledgement of integrity, and affirmation of the human effort involved in navigating mistakes. For the technician, it was both reassuring and motivating. It reinforced the idea that confronting challenges openly, rather than hiding or denying them, could lead to respect and trust. Even in situations that initially seemed terrifying, beyond professional lessons, the incident had a personal impact. The technician found a renewed sense of confidence, an understanding that mistakes, while serious, could be addressed with courage and clarity. The fear that had once dominated was replaced with a calm determination to act responsibly, to anticipate challenges, and to handle unexpected situations with honesty and care. It was a profound reminder that human character was often revealed most clearly in moments of pressure and uncertainty. Life continued. With the daily rhythm of tests, samples, and reports, yet the memory of that night served as a guiding principle. In every careful label, every double-checked number, every report reviewed, there was a subtle acknowledgement of the lessons learned. Attention to detail was no longer just a procedural requirement. It was a demonstration of respect for the people whose lives depended on the accuracy of the work, a commitment to integrity, and a recognition of the human responsibility inherent in every action. The technician also became a quiet mentor to new colleagues, sharing the importance of vigilance, the value of honesty, and the necessity of transparency. Stories of mistakes handled with courage became teaching moments, emphasizing that errors were not just failures, but opportunities to learn, improve, and demonstrate character. It was a shift from fear to empowerment, from anxiety to resilience, and from isolation to human connection. The incident also prompted reflection on broader life lessons. Fear and uncertainty, while intense, could be navigated with integrity. Power and influence, while formidable, were not immune to human vulnerability. Mistakes, even serious ones, could be addressed with honesty and responsibility, leading not to ruin, but to respect and growth. It was a profound understanding that human courage and sincerity could bridge gaps that fear, misunderstanding, and anxiety might otherwise create. As time went on, the technician noticed subtle changes in perspective. Work became not just a series of tasks to complete, but a meaningful responsibility. It's an opportunity to demonstrate diligence, care, and integrity. Each action, though small in the grand scheme, carried significance. Each choice reflected character. The lessons of that night, the fear, the panic, the honesty, and the resolution were now embedded in every decision, every careful check, and every moment of responsibility. The city outside the lab continued its relentless pace, indifferent to the small dramas unfolding within. Yet, within the quiet walls of the lab, a story of courage, honesty, and human resilience had permanently changed the technician. The hum of machines and the glow of monitors became a backdrop to a deeper understanding that even ordinary people, performing ordinary work, could face extraordinary situations and emerge with integrity and tact. Eventually, the technician realized that the experience had not just been a test of skill or knowledge, but a profound lesson in humanity. Mistakes were inevitable, but the choice to confront them openly, the willingness to take responsibility, and the courage to face fear head-on defined character more than any flawless execution of a task. It was a subtle, yet powerful realization that would guide professional life and personal choices for years to come. In quiet moments, the memory of that night still surfaced. The panic, the dread, the weight of responsibility, all were vivid. Yet alongside them, there was also the memory of calm, reason, understanding, and resolution. It was a balanced recollection, a reminder that human experiences are rarely one-dimensional, and that even the most frightening situations could lead to growth, insight, and unexpected respect as weeks turned into months. The technician continued the work with renewed purpose. Mistakes were approached with caution but without paralyzing fear. Responsibilities were embraced with care, precision, and thoughtfulness. And in every action, there was an awareness of the delicate balance between human error, trust, and the extraordinary potential for integrity to shine through. The story of the mistaken test, results in the billionaire's response, became a quiet part of the technician's life. A personal touchstone of courage and honesty. It was not a story of panic or failure, but a story of human connection, integrity, and the enduring value of facing challenges with clarity and sincerity. In the ordinary rhythm of the lab, amidst the machines, monitors, and daily tasks, the lessons remained, guiding every choice, every action, and every moment of responsibility. Ultimately, the experience left a lasting imprint. The technician learned that mistakes, while daunting, could reveal strength, integrity, and resilience. Honesty, even in moments of fear, could create trust and respect. Human connection, courage, and clarity could turn a crisis into an opportunity for growth. And in the quiet, reflective moments after the events, there was a profound sense of understanding that even in the most ordinary settings, life can present extraordinary lessons, shaping character, perspective, and the way people approach the world around them.